Hello to all my frustrated millennials out there. Welcome to the first episode of the Frustrated Millennial podcast. I am your host, Lauren Nicole, and today I want to talk about calling yourself out on your own bullshit. Intense, right? Let's get into it. Okay, so in a world where it's much more common to talk about going to therapy, we're talking about childhood traumas, we're talking about being triggered and what triggers us. We talk about having boundaries, and maybe those are some things, some separate topics that I will discuss on the Frustrated Millennial in the future. But today I want to talk about calling yourself out as it is connected to those things, because sometimes, I will say oftentimes actually, we can't really see ourselves. I think it takes you either being kind of shocked by stepping out of yourself, maybe via, what do you call it, what class of drugs, psychedelics, maybe via like psychedelics or something trippy to get you to kind of step outside of yourself, or just being extremely introspective. I think even those people who tend to be fairly self-aware have a bit of a challenge really stepping out of themselves to take a full-on view of how they present to the world. Now, of course, I am not advocating the use of drugs. I am not encouraging anyone to go out there and try psychedelics. I am simply stating that this is something that you can find on YouTube or wherever, where people who have taken these types of drugs have taken trips that have been very, very informative in terms of, them seeing themselves or them viewing their lives in a particular way. But I definitely wanted to offer that disclaimer that the Frustrated Millennial podcast is not advocating for the use or misuse or abuse of any type of substance at all. But I know that we live in a time and in a climate where you have to be very careful about the things that you say. So, no, I'm not saying for people to go do these things. I am not saying that I do these things myself. I'm simply offering information that is relevant to the topic at hand. So now that that disclaimer is out of the way, let's jump back in. If you think about it, we can't really see ourselves. We all individually have an idea of what we may look like, but we have a picture of who we are and how we are from the inside. And if you think about any story, any friend, any situation you may hear, and when you hear the story, you're like, oh, wow, that's crazy. They did this or they said that. But thinking about how from the inside, we all feel or believe certain things about ourselves. For instance, you may have someone who they respond to things that generally are perceived as negative, right? But from the inside of that person, they may feel as though they are correct, as though other people bring them to a place that may be perceived negatively, that, they are justified in being this way, even though the world may perceive them as negative. Understand? Like that person may not consider themselves to be negative, or even if they think that they are or say that they are, it may be as a result of other people consistently telling them that they are negative, but not that they themselves believe that they are negative. Let me try to break this idea down a little bit further. Okay. So I have a theory that we all exist in something of a bubble. So we're all passing through the world in our bubble, and inside your bubble, you genuinely have beliefs about who you are and what that means for you. You might think, I'm smart. I don't take any shit from anybody. I do XYZ because that's what I'm interested in. And I don't do anything I don't want to do, or nobody's bossing me around, anything crazy like that, right? No, well, that's not necessarily crazy, but bear with me here. I'm trying to make a point. So everyone else is in their bubble, and every now and then one is able to step outside of that bubble. Like I said, whether it is by being kind of separated from your bubble for whatever reason, or because other people within their bubbles are mirrors to you in your behavior, right? So now you're getting a glimpse of yourself to say, whoa, that's what that's like, because you got it in someone else from their bubble. Now, on the outside of your bubble, looking at you, and the way that they perceive you may be completely different than how you actually perceive yourself inside of your bubble. So inside of yourself, you think, oh, I stick up for myself. I put my foot down. I don't take any shit from anyone. Nobody's going to boss me around. I don't do anything I don't want to do, XYZ. From the outside of your bubble, you look defiant, rebellious, maybe loud, maybe uncooperative, maybe inconsiderate, right? From the outside of your bubble, you might look like a bratty teenager. And it's like, yo, grow up. What's going on? Why are you acting like this? From the inside, you're like, what do you mean? So I'm just supposed to let people talk to me any kind of way? So I'm just supposed to let people XYZ? And so what happens is, when the way that you view yourself inside of a bubble is different than the way that people outside of your bubble perceive you, it creates conflict because there is a disconnect, right? And so when you think about this, how many times have you had issues being misunderstood because, for whatever reason, like there might be a communication barrier despite speaking the same language or being from similar backgrounds or even being in the same family? Why can't they just understand me? And it's because from the inside, the way we perceive ourselves is completely different from how others perceive us. Now, there is a lesson in maturity in being able to step outside of yourself and take an honest look at who you present as to the world. Now, I know in our current state of things in this culture and in this society, we're not supposed to be overly concerned about what other people think about us. And, people are supposed to accept us and all these things. But the truth of the matter is that some of us are full of shit. Message. And there are parts of every single one of us that can stand to be adjusted and or corrected, if you will. And I know there are some people who do not like the sound of that or the idea of that. But think about at least 5 people you know. You can think of something negative about almost all of them, right? Now think if any of those 5 people consider you to be one of their 5, they can think of something negative that probably doesn't come to mind for you. So I'm not saying that we need to change ourselves, or we need to alter who we are. I'm saying it might be of value in terms of your growth as a person, as a human being, as a fellow being just in the existence of the world. If we want to think about, we want to make the world a better place and all these things that sound super like altruistic, but nobody ever really wants to do because it actually takes work. We have to take a look at ourselves. Like, we're not always nice to people. You might think you're a nice person, but there might be like a group of other people who think you're a jerk. And it's like, why? Well, I don't care what they think. And so even taking that stance is limiting your own self. So the reason that I brought up some of the topics and concepts that arise in the self-help, healing, therapy, mental health, and wellness space earlier on in the episode was because another topic that tends to come up is shadow work, which, as much as healing and having hope and, working through your traumas is a major part of things, doing shadow work, which is addressing the darker sides of ourselves, is equally as important as those other things. So we can hold people accountable for the harm that they have caused us in our lives. We can deep dive and journal and do different routines and rituals and practices that may help us get past some things. We can regulate our nervous systems all we want to. But until you take a very honest look at your own self, the role that you have played in your own life, you will continue to have an incomplete picture. There is nothing wrong with being honest with yourself. And when I tell you, it is life-changing to be able to step outside and say, wow, I can see where I can be perceived as very, very inconsiderate, where inside of myself, I just kind of thought maybe if I just move for myself or at my own speed, or if I just, maybe you don't have kids, so you don't have to think about other people being inconvenienced so much, or you're not married, so you don't have to consider other people all the time as a part of your day. But that does not mean that that's still not true, or it still doesn't apply to you, right? I would have to think of another good example, but the point is, what are some of those things for you? And it's not an easy thing to do. It's helpful to have very honest people who love you in your life, who are willing to share that with you. Some ways that you can come to figure out what some of those things are. One, I think it definitely matters where you are at in your life. If you are in a stage where you are going through changes, where you are kind of leveling up and it's causing you to, get rid of some old habits or let go of some old things, then that's a really good time to evaluate what are some of the things that cannot go with you as you elevate yourself in your life. So one of the things I'm trying to decide how vulnerable I'm actually going to get on this podcast, right? But I said I was going to give you me. I'm still going to keep some of me for me, but I will share with you guys so that it's not just this general blabbering that has no context. So I was dating someone, we broke things off, and I was very, 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 very hurt, right? I was heartbroken. And in the midst of my heartbrokenness, I was journaling. And as I was journaling, I was going back over some of my past dating experiences, whether I dated the person or we just talked for a little while. And I thought about my role in hurting other people and just how I hurt those other people, right? Because I was hurting in this moment. So it almost felt as though I got a dose of my own medicine. And so in me writing, I decided to just write down what and one of the things that I wrote was I abandoned people. And when I wrote I abandoned people, so journaling is like this thing where it's very similar to a practice done in therapy called brain spotting, where if you are willing to let it flow, more is going to come along. So if you're just free flowing and writing and you're just letting it go without trying to control what you're putting on the page, then it's just going to come out. So as I wrote that talking point, people and situations kind of came back up to the surface, and I was like, oh my God, right? And so now I'm seeing myself where at the time that those things took place, I felt fully justified in walking away. I was angry, I was upset, I was hurt, didn't feel that I should continue this relationship or continue this friendship or what have you. They weren't going to change and XYZ and all of these justifications as to why I was not going to allow myself to continue to be either mistreated or disregarded or whatever the case may be. And I'm just going to walk away. And I don't owe anyone any explanations as to why I made this choice for myself. All the while, in me making this choice for myself, I also made a choice for the other person in that relationship. And in me making that choice for them, I took their option from them. So as nice as it sounds, well, I'm not gonna, and it was hurtful to that other person who probably regarded me a little bit higher than that in terms of how I would handle them in a relationship or in a friendship. Now, I didn't realize that at the time. It took growth and hurt to open up the reality of what that was like from a whole perspective, and not just from inside myself, but looking at the whole picture and then looking at Lauren from the outside to say, damn, that's how Lauren handled that situation. That's not really cool, right? And so this is like a major exercise in growth and maturity. What are some of the ways that you think that you can be better? What are some of the flaws that you think that you may have? Like, just think about your own self. Journaling, like I said, is a very, very good way of going about it when you just write. Just write, just let it flow. Maybe give yourself some talking points, find some really cool questions online. Like, what are some ways that people tend to respond to me when I'm angry? Do I shut down? Do I walk away while people are speaking? Do I go ghost? What are some of the things that you just tend to do habitually? And then think about some of the past experiences that you had where you did those things and maybe you didn't have a positive outcome with whomever was involved in that situation with you. Now try to look at the situation from the other side as though and see if that's something that you just did at that one time, or if that's something you tend to do frequently and you're like, oh wow, I need to improve that. That is one way to step outside of yourself. Looking objectively at situations without being defensive, without trying to assume that you are right, you were the only right one in the situation, you had the best idea, etc., that you were just one player in a cast of players. Look at your life like a TV show or like a movie. Just literally just step out of it with no emotion attached. Now, if you cannot step outside of it without emotion attached to it, then you're still going to rationalize through whatever took place through a very emotional lens. Think about something that you may have gotten over by now. It doesn't really bother you anymore. It doesn't affect you. It is what it is at this point. Wow, you said that? He said what? He did what? She did not have to say that to you. Take a picture, look, and call yourself out on your own BS. Now is the time for growth. It is time to grow. It is time to elevate. It is time to transform. And think in terms of not so much changing yourself. Change is not bad. Change is actually good. Change yourself for the good, for yourself. And as you change for yourself, you will find that people and things respond to you differently. Not because you're trying to be something that you're not, this idea of being someone that you're not, because you can literally be whoever you want to at any given moment, at any given time. It's a choice. So you can choose to be better. You can choose to show up better, whatever better is for you, or you could not. But I myself have had some very eye-opening moments of my own BS as of late, and I wanted to jump on here and just talk it out, kind of see if I could relay those thoughts to anyone else in a way that would make any semblance of sense. And if other people may feel the same way, or if they may have like a relatable story, or if it's something that they weren't thinking about that they're thinking about now, I'm telling you guys, like this really is an important thing, because we are oftentimes really giving off things that we have no intention of giving off. We are giving off messages. We are giving off, attitudes and different things to other people that we have no idea other people felt that way. Like, I had no idea. Like, you thought I was what? Have you ever had someone be like, yeah, I thought you were mean, or I thought you were, this, and you're like, what? How? Like, me? How? And maybe it's because, you tend to carry yourself a particular way, or when you walk around, you have a certain face on, and some people will still say, well, that's just me. But the thing is, don't limit yourself that way. Don't be so unwilling to really look at you and be like, do I have to walk around looking like I'm ready to cuss somebody out? Do I have to? And where did that come from? What part of me is so on the defense that I wear this face when really I'm a gummy bear on the inside? So these are just thoughts that I'm throwing out there. Your girl is never afraid to be a little bit wrong, but I'm definitely open to some feedback. Jump on to our Instagram page. I'm getting it up and running, guys. I'm going to put some posts up there. It's a real page, but don't be afraid to jump in my DMs or in my comments and let me know what you think or give some feedback. Yeah. Let's take a look at our BS, guys, and figure out what the hell is going on and how we can be a little bit better. Now, of course, please keep it respectful. If you made it to the end of this episode, thank you so much for joining me on the very first episode of the Frustrated Millennial podcast. Again, my name is Lauren Nicole, and this Frustrated Millennial is signing off. Until next time.